That's not answering my question, though. I'm asking you if under this democracy we vote in Christian nationalism, what's the problem with it?
Yeah, fair point. So yeah, I'm getting to that. So what would be bad? Or all the things that I described before. We're going to have...
Now, what would be bad, ultimately, under democracy, the system itself is set so that we can do this, right? If people think it's in their own best interest to vote based on their Christianity, you shouldn't have a problem with that, right?
As long as we follow the law. Yeah, the way the Constitution is written, it should prevent this. But if we ignore the Constitution, burn it down, then yeah, you could have an ideological capture of the government.
Yeah.
But we're not supposed to have that.
Wait.
Once you allow someone to capture the government, then you immediately allow someone else to capture the government.
How would this be capturing the government? You want people to vote based on their value structures, right?
Well, as long as they're voting in the same interests of the goal of the government.
That you want, right?
That they would want, even a rationally ordered person.
Well, hang on. If entailed here is that they don't want that.
Let me finish my explanation to that. So, if you allow a government to just, like people to just vote for what ideology the government can push, then it's a matter of time only that someone gets in and pushes the ideology you don't like and forces you to do things, like prevents us from having this meeting, for example, shuts this down, like maybe would happen in China, for instance. As soon as you allow that to happen, you will lose control of the government and bad things will happen as a result. That's how we get fascism and all of that stuff.
Yeah, but do you see how you're not answering to this?
But the goal then is therefore to prevent that.
Here's what I'm asking again.
You have to structure the government so that you have the government's neutrality. It treats everyone the same, and you build it so that it cannot
Richard, can you answer
else.
to the question? If it's the case in democracy, people vote in Christian nationalism, how can you make the claim they don't want it? And if it's the case that we're after human flourishing, hang on, if it's the case that we're after human flourishing, isn't that, I mean, what you're basing this on is like, we should stop them from doing that, right?
Well, so as long as they're following the Constitution, it was built to prevent that, right? Then that's not going to happen, right?
Well, you can vote in people to get rid of parts of the Constitution you don't like.
But changing the Constitution requires more than a majority vote. So... yeah, what would happen? Here's what would happen.
Back up.
If we got
people can vote in politicians, right, who can then do things which would change the Constitution, or there could be a constitutional convention.
You know how the Constitution? Yeah, like it's a lot harder to get a constitutional amendment change. So let's assume you've got a society that's so.
And it depends on how the Supreme Court rules.
Let's assume you've got such a let's say it's 75% of the country now is Christian nationalists, and they actually get the legislatures they want. They actually in all the states and everything, and they get the Constitution changed. What my proposition would say is that's when things are going to go south. That is actually going to go against human interests because of all the past examples of this happened before.
Yeah, so you want to stop them from doing that, right?
I would want to stop them from doing that.
Would you use force and persuasion to do that?
Only if they are breaking the law. If they
but they change the law to their preference.
Yeah, I think in that case, if that happened, if the country actually voted to destroy itself, I would have to leave.
Okay, so I just want to make sure though. Would you use force rather than persuasion in that case to stop that from happening?
Only if they use force against me. If they're using force, then I'll use force. But if we had the whole country literally just decided this, to basically just
it's not the whole country.
Destroy the country.
That's not how it works. That's not how it works.
I would actually have to leave. And if they tried chasing me and finding me,
they're not trying to chase you and find you. Yeah. The spirit of the question is asking you. I'm asking you a simple question.
Force is met with force.
Yeah, I'm not asking you about force being met with force. I'm asking you if force should be used to prevent this if necessary. So, like, let's say, for instance, I don't know, 60% of the nation wanted it, and the rest of them didn't. Should they, at that point, be using force rather than persuasion?
So if they did it, like they actually did it, then I would just have to leave. Because if they're not
You're not answering the question, dude.
Unless they start using force against me. Like if they come for me to like all the atheists, well, now I have to fight them.
I'm asking you if it's the case that force should be used by people who are in a minority, if the majority is voting in these policies, yes or no?
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Should people, if necessary, use force, even if it's the case that these are being voted in legitimately, right? Is there some problem with people using force at that point to stop it?
Well, I think at that point, it is the wrong word here. So like what then happens? So once they turn around, once they've done it, and they turn around and start using force on us.
Well, what force?
To go kill all the atheists? Or
no, they're not. No. They could just do things like,
but
I don't know, no more marriage.
By the time, look at the French Revolution. By the time they get in there, you won't have control of what they decide at that point.
But
they
you can't
could decide to go kill all
But
the
what I'm
atheists.
saying is that is it the case that you would, if you had X amount of like people in a minority who they felt that they were being oppressed, they just weren't being oppressed with violence necessarily, unless it was a case they were then breaking laws.
At some
new
point,
laws.
it has to be violence. There has to be violence, right? And so if you're
then that would be the case with anything. If you just
'cause
violate any law, there's violence.
If you take away all the rights but then never enforce that,
Yeah.
then you're basically just respecting rights.
I totally
so
agree.
If you take away all the rights and then enforce that, you're using violence to take away people's
Yeah, but I mean,
rights.
this could be phrased however you want. There's a right for men and women to get married. That's it.
A right?
Yeah, you just say there's a right for women and women to get married. Now we're enforcing that right, right?
Yeah,
and then get married, they say, oh, well, and you're not allowed to do that. You're violating the law.
Well, so I'm pretty sure, if you want to follow the logic on that, I agree with the conservative Supreme Court decision written by Neil Gorsuch and concurred by Roberts on why actually that it follows out of the Civil Rights Act, that it would be against that. So you would have to overthrow the Civil Rights Act. Okay.
Or
so
just have it
suppose you do.
reinterpreted or amended.
Yeah.
You could have things amended,
right, correct.
things like
you
this.
could
Well, what I'm saying is
amend
that
it,
these are
whatever.
all,
Yeah.
this was done in a lawful way, right, to get these things done.
Which it was, right? So
Yeah, but if it's done in a lawful way to get them undone, right,
Yeah.
is that now fascism?
What do you, yeah, no. So
Yes or no?
fascism
Yeah or
comes-
no?
So if it's done in that way,
Yeah.
the process is not fascist. The end result might be if they start coming after you with billy clubs to like arrest people, for example.
Well, they're not going to arrest them, but what if they just don't let them get married?
But if they just
what
don't
if
let them
they
get- no, yeah,
hang on, Richard, let me ask the question. So let's say, for instance, they go through, they outlaw things like this, make that law. They outlaw marriage, make that law, right? They outlaw things like kids getting reassignment surgery, and they make that a law.
Sure.
All right? People violate those laws, they then get arrested, or things like this, like you would for any other law. Is that now, are we in fascist territory?
No, because at that point, the people are actually having a say, and they're just using a lawful, nonviolent process to decide what rights they're going to have.
Perfect.
Now, we would engage in persuasion, right? And so I would think that that's going to be bad. It's going to lead to bad outcomes.
Now then, tell
But we
me
can talk
any
about
of the current
actual basis.
This
of
is perfect.
Evidence. So this is why secular.
Now we're getting there.
About
So,
evidence.
so help me out here. What Christian nationalist proposition then fits this form of fascism? Use of force rather than persuasion, democracy.
Yeah.
Which one? Which
What-
actual proposition being
So-
proposed by Christian nationalists right now?
It sounds like
fits that.
you're defining Christian nationalism as simply taking away the rights of people to marry. It
No,
sounds
no,
like
no, no,
that's
no.
all you
I'm
mean.
asking you a specific question. I'm going to ask it again. What proposition from anybody who's advocating Christian nationalism would not fall under the idea that they're changing the laws to better suit themselves, including amending several constitutional amendments or things like this? How would that be fascist? By your definition, that's not fascism now.
Right.
So if that's the case,
It only becomes fascism when violence comes up.
oh, yeah, right, exactly. So Christian nationalism is not, in fact, unless you can give me the propositions of Christian nationalism that are going to lead to this sort of violence rather than just law changing, can you?
So are you claiming that Christian nationalism won't increase?
I didn't claim anything. I asked you a question. Can you steel man what? Or at
Yeah,
least
to understand your
repeat back.
question, I got to understand what you're getting at. So I need to
You know, you
understand.
don't. You don't need to understand what I'm getting at to understand my question. You just need
'cause
to answer the
I don't
question.
know what you're asking for.
Well, let me ask you again.
Yeah.
Christians right now, Christian nationalist thought leaders
Mm-hmm.
all over the place who are saying we want to amend these various laws under the democratic rules, use the Constitution in order to amend many of these laws, right? And then if you
And
violate
you have
those
the
laws...
protected right to do that, to talk about
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
and
yeah. So hang
persuade?
on.
We have the protected right to persuade people to
I
not
understand,
vote
but
that
what I'm
way?
saying
Yeah.
to you is how could that be fascism if there's no use of force being involved here?
So-
If the can you show me the Christian nationalist proposition that
if-
leads to force?
If you're talking about the Christian nationalist government is not going to use force to enforce any laws or do anything.
Your secular government will.
Yes, but those are evidence-based, human-centered things. They're not based on ideology. that
That's
is
not what you
contrary to
said.
evidence.
You said fascism is use of force rather than persuasion democracy. It doesn't matter if they're using
Yeah.
evidence or not. Hang on.
Persuasion and democracy,
using,
yeah.
They're utilizing persuasion and democracy.
right.
And they're still utilizing persuasion and democracy.
Yes.
So they're not fascist, right?
Well, they're not advocating. I mean, they might be advocating for a fascist government, but they're not fascists yet because
No. That's not what I'm asking.
To violence. They
This is
haven't
this is
actually-
wild to me. So help me out here again. If it's the case that democratically, for instance, we just say no more right? You're just not allowed to be anymore, right? Or I don't know, you're not allowed to get married as anymore, and you're not allowed to do anymore. Let's just say that you're like not allowed to gamble or do drugs anymore, ever, right? You're not allowed to do any of those things.
Yep.
That's passed democratically through persuasion.
Yeah.
Now it has the force of law.
That's right.
That's no longer fascism.
That by itself is not fascism.
Then can you give me any
If you can
Christian
also-
propositions?
If you
Christian
can persuade people to vote again to take those things away and
Perfect.
change them, yes.
Then show me the Christian nationalists out there who are giving the proposition which would lead to this fascism you're talking about, because that's all they're talking about doing.
Yeah, so I don't know exactly what you have in mind as Christian nationalism, like what the Christian nationalist government
That's
would
not my
do.
question. My question is, can you name a single Christian nationalist right now who is proposing anything other than just amending laws and tailoring them to their own preferences?
Wait.